Hello, and welcome to Vox Herald, your go-to podcast for the stories shaping Canada today. I'm your host, San Juan, and I'm thrilled to bring you a unique tale that blends history, culture, and cross-border connections. Today, we're stepping back in time to explore the Gull, a train that once connected Halifax to Boston, carrying Maritimers on adventures to New England. We'll dive into a new musical inspired by this forgotten route, unpack its cultural and historical significance, and explore what it tells us about Canada-U.S. relations past and present. Stay with us for a journey that's as nostalgic as it is relevant to Canadians today. Let's set the scene. Picture this. It's the 1930s, and you're boarding a train in Halifax at 8:15 a.m. The whistle blows, and the Gull pulls out of the station, bound for Boston. For 3 decades, from 1930 to 1960, this passenger train was a lifeline for Maritimers, connecting small towns in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick to the bustling hub of New England. It stopped in places like Truro, Amherst, Moncton, St. John, and McAdam before crossing the border into Maine, hitting Bangor and Portland, and arriving at Boston's North Station the next morning. For many, it was more than just a train. It was a ticket to adventure, opportunity, and connection. Fast forward to today, and this piece of history is inspiring a new musical by St. John writer Jacqui Clydesdale. She's capturing the stories of those who rode the Gull, from a career woman in the 1930s, partying her way to Boston for the weekend, to a young boy in the 1940s watching Ted Williams' hit at Fenway Park. These tales aren't just nostalgic. They reflect a time when Canada and the U.S. felt a little closer, a little more connected. So, why does this matter to Canadians today? Let's break it down. The Gull wasn't just a mode of transport. It was a cultural bridge. For Maritimers, it offered access to Boston's vibrant arts scene, educational institutions, and economic opportunities. Families reunited, students pursued degrees, and sports fans caught Red Sox games. The train fostered a sense of shared identity between the Maritimes and New England, regions that share geographic proximity and historical ties, from Acadian migrations to trade partnerships. Jacqui Clydesdale's musical aims to revive this history, and it's striking a chord in the Maritimes, where local storytelling is a cornerstone of cultural identity. In places like Halifax or St. John, community theater and music are vital ways to preserve history and bring people together. This project also highlights the contributions of women like Clydesdale and her collaborator, singer-songwriter Angela Boudreau, who are amplifying maritime voices through art. To understand the Gull's impact, let's look at some history. In the 1930s, Canada was grappling with the Great Depression, and the Maritimes were hit hard. Jobs were scarce, and many looked to the U.S. for work or education. The Gull made that possible, offering an affordable way to travel. A round-trip ticket in the 1940s cost about $15, roughly $250 today, according to inflation data from Statistics Canada. Compare that to a flight from Halifax to Boston today, which can easily run $400, $600, and you see why the train was a game-changer for working-class families. The train also reflected Canada's diversity. Passengers included Acadian families visiting relatives in Maine, where many Acadians had settled after the 18th century deportations, and Indigenous travelers from Micmac or Maliseet communities connecting with kin across the border. These stories remind us that Canada's history is woven with diverse threads, and projects like Clydesdale's musical ensure those voices aren't forgotten. Clydesdale's project comes at a time when Canada-U.S. relations are under scrutiny. Trade disputes, border policies, and political rhetoric have strained ties in recent years. In 2024, for example, U.S. tariff threats on Canadian goods like lumber and seafood, hit the Maritimes hard. According to the Canadian government, the Maritimes exported $1.8 billion in seafood to the U.S. in 2023, supporting thousands of jobs in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Tensions like these make the Gull's story timely, reminding us of an era when cross-border movement was seamless and communities felt interconnected. Clydesdale herself noted the current political climate as a motivator for her musical. She wants to highlight the shared history between the Maritimes and New England, fostering a sense of unity. This resonates in places like McAdam, the last Canadian stop on the Gull's route, where the historic train station still stands as a symbol of cross-border ties. The Maritimes have always relied on strong ties with the U.S. In 1950, at the height of the Gull's operation, the Maritimes' economy was heavily tied to trade with New England. Public records from the Canadian National Railways show that the Gull carried up to 200 passengers daily, boosting local businesses at stops like Moncton and St. John. Hotels, restaurants, and shops thrived as travelers passed through. Compare that to today. Halifax's tourism sector, worth $1.3 billion annually, according to Destination Canada, could benefit from a modern rail link to the U.S., especially for eco-conscious travelers seeking alternatives to flights. But the impact wasn't uniform. In rural areas like Amherst or McAdam, the Gull was a lifeline, connecting small communities to urban centers. In contrast, larger hubs like Halifax had more travel options, so the train's closure in 1960 hit rural areas harder. Today, the lack of affordable cross-border travel options remains a challenge for Maritimers, especially in remote regions. To bring this to life, let's consider the passengers. Historical accounts from the New Brunswick Museum describe Mi'kmaq artisans traveling to Boston to sell crafts, connecting with Wabanaki communities in Maine. These trips strengthened cultural ties across the border, a legacy that persists in modern Indigenous exchanges. Similarly, Acadian passengers used the Gull to visit family in Maine's Little Canada communities, like Madawaska, where French is still spoken today. Contrast this with the career woman Clydesdale mentioned, who parted her way to Boston. Her story reflects the social mobility the Gull enabled for women in an era when gender norms were restrictive. These diverse narratives, Indigenous, Acadian, working class, and female, show how the Gull was a microcosm of Canada's multicultural fabric. Clydesdale's musical isn't just about the past. It's a call to reconnect. In 2023, the Halifax regional municipality explored reviving rail connections to boost tourism and trade, citing a potential $50 million economic boost per a feasibility study. While no firm plans exist, the idea taps into a broader Canadian push for sustainable transport. Could a modern Gull strengthen Canada-U.S. ties? It's worth asking, especially as both countries navigate trade tensions and climate goals. From a cultural perspective, projects like this musical preserve maritime identity. The Maritimes have a rich tradition of storytelling through music. Think Stan Rogers or Rita McNeil and Clydesdale's work continues that legacy. It also amplifies women's voices in the arts, aligning with Canada's commitment to gender equity and cultural funding, which saw $180 million allocated to diverse artists in 2024 per Canadian Heritage. That's today's journey on Vox Herald. The Gull may no longer run, but its stories of adventure, connection, and cross-border community still resonate. From St. John to Halifax, from Mi'kmaq artisans to Acadian families, this train carried the hopes and dreams of Maritimers. Jacqui Clydesdale's musical reminds us how art can keep those stories alive and maybe even inspire new connections with our neighbors to the south. What's your take? Have you heard family stories about the Gull, or do you have your own cross-border adventures to share? Let us know on X at Vox Herald. Until next time, keep exploring Canada's stories, and let's stay connected as a community.